at Wild Now Foundation. My name is Dr. Mike Musgrave, and I'm at the Conservation Leadership Faculty at the School of Wildlife Conservation at Africa Leadership University. What is wildlife in captivity, and how is it a conservation practice? Well, a lot of wildlife rehabilitation centers provide a very good service for injured wildlife, poisoned wildlife. Of course, a lot of wildlife gets injured on our roads, in traffic accidents. And so captive wildlife in those kinds of institutions can be rehabilitated. Sometimes they can't be released back into the wild. If it's a bird that's wing is damaged and it'll never fly again, then those animals have to be kept in captivity. And so that leads on to the next question: is what have been the positive effects of wildlife in captivity? Well, there's a strong educational value there. If you have injured wildlife that can't be released back into the wild, you could educate people. People come visit it, maybe even touch or hold the animal and learn about the role of that animal in the ecosystem. And as we all know, education is hugely important when it comes to conservation, wildlife conservation, sustainability, and a better relationship with our planet. Is it ecologically friendly or ethical to have wildlife in confined spaces? Well, that depends. It depends what the purpose is of keeping them there. Of course, in the example I provided, where we are rehabilitating injured animals or looking after orphaned animals, there's a strong ethical component there. When it just comes, to the point of keeping animals in captivity just for the sake of people to see, I think there are ethical problems with that. But of course, it depends what happens in the background. Many zoos, for example, do very valuable research on wildlife diseases. And without having access to a captive animal, it's difficult to do that kind of research. But where animals are purely being kept for commercial gain through these petting activities that tourists like to have their photographs taken with a lion or something. I'm not sure that I agree with the ethics around that. And it's been shown that many of those operations, once a lion reaches 18 months old, for example, it's too dangerous to interact with. And then those lions become problematic, and they're often then released and fed into canned lion hunting operations, and that creates a whole different ethical questions there. So the answer is it can be, but in some circumstances it's just not ecologically justifiable or ethical to have animals in confined spaces. What role has social media played in the growth of wildlife captivity? Unfortunately, social media plays a strong role. People see pictures of their friends holding a cute lion cub or interacting with wildlife in some way, and they want to do it, and they want a picture on social media. And so it encourages the unethical practices of petting, lion petting, or whatever animals are being used, so that people can just take pictures with them. So a strong role there for social media. My thoughts on the increased wildlife privatization in different countries. I'm a strong advocate of the private ownership of wildlife for the reason that it works in terms of conservation. We've seen countries like Namibia, South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, where wildlife ownership is privatized, and that means that not only wealthy individuals can own wildlife, but in fact communities can own and reap rewards from wildlife. If all you're allowed to do is look at the wildlife, there's not much you can do to reap value out of that. Of course, you can have tourists come and take photographs, but that's a very limited income and a limited market. Once you own the wildlife, you can sell it as a live animal. You can sell it to a hunter, just a few of them every year, charge a lot of money for 4 or 5 animals a year, or you can harvest the meat. Of course, the land all produces a surplus, and we can harvest that surplus every year. And so we can develop real businesses. And of course, then there's beautiful products that come from wildlife. Zebra skins are one of the biggest products, wildlife products exported from South Africa, for example. And hides and leather and fur. All of these are products that can be developed through private ownership of wildlife. But of course, we need to control the ownership. We need to make sure that it's ethical, that animals are being kept in in a way that is ethical and as close to wild as possible, so that we don't overstep that mark. Thanks. I hope you've enjoyed this. Everybody at Wild Now Foundation, goodbye.